Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
So we're going to go over different properties with those. So before, when we were going over a rhombus and a square, those are parallelograms. Those are quadrilaterals that were parallelograms. These ones are quadrilaterals that are not parallelograms. Okay, so they do have some different properties associated with them. I forgot to take attendance, so I'm doing that now. Okay. Yes.
This is 6 or 9?
9. All right, so a trapezoid is a quadrilateral with exactly one pair of parallel sides. So it's not a parallelogram. A parallelogram has 2 pairs of parallel sides. A trapezoid has 1 pair of parallel sides. So that would be ST and RU. Okay? Those are the only sides that are parallel. With a trapezoid, we have a mid-segment or a median. Okay? It is the segment that connects the midpoints of the legs of the trapezoid. Okay, so if I look to the right, your mid-segment would connect at your midpoints of those legs here. So SR and TU would be the legs of your trapezoid. And then if I have that midpoint there, your mid-segment would be the line connecting those two together. Okay, that's a mid-segment. Its measure is equal to 1/2 the sum of the lengths of the bases. Now with your trapezoid, you have 2 bases. Those bases are your parallel sides. So here we would have ST and RU as the bases. So our mid-segment formula is equal to 1 base plus the other base divided by 2. So all you're doing is averaging your 2 bases to get that mid-segment length. Okay? If the legs are congruent, the trapezoid is called an isosceles trapezoid. So just like we had an isosceles triangle with 2 of our sides congruent, we have an isosceles trapezoid with 2 of our sides congruent. So here, this trapezoid is an isosceles trapezoid. SR is congruent to TU. Okay, so those 2 legs there are congruent to each other. In an isosceles trapezoid, 2 pairs of base angles are congruent. Okay, so in my isosceles trapezoid at the right here, my base angles R and U are congruent to each other. Okay, and S and T are congruent to each other. Okay, so those are your 2 pairs of base angles. Your base angles are created by a leg and the baseline. Okay, your diagonals are also congruent. Okay, so this is with an isosceles trapezoid. So I'll just show you your diagonals. If I draw in my isosceles trapezoid here, that's what it looks like. Your diagonals would be congruent to each other. Okay, so this one and this one would be that same length. Any questions? Okay, then I want to do a few examples here. Okay, so in number 1, we have an isosceles trapezoid ABDC and we want to find the measure of angle D. Okay, so that's this angle right here. And yes, it is ABDC. When you draw out any type of quadrilateral, it has to go in order. So that means I have to go from A to B to D to C. Okay, so it has to flow in order. It can't flow to the side and then back. That's why it doesn't say C and then D. So since this is isosceles, I know my legs are congruent. Okay, since my legs are congruent, what do I know about the base angles? They're both 125. Okay. Now, since I have these parallel lines here, right? In a trapezoid, to get your consecutive angle, you're going to take 180 and subtract the other one. Okay, so your consecutive angles still add to be 180. This is with an isosceles trapezoid. This is with any trapezoid, actually. Your consecutive angles add to 180. So I can take 180 minus the angle I have to get 55. So the measure of angle D would be 55 degrees. Okay, looking at number 2 then, we want to find the measure of angle L and the measure of angle J. Now if I look at this trapezoid, I know that this is an isosceles trapezoid since both of my legs are 5. Okay, that's what I want to look for first to see if my base angles are going to be congruent. Since it is an isosceles trapezoid, they are congruent. So that means K and J are the same. Those would be congruent angles. So I found J already. That was 40. Now I want to find L. How do I find L? Good job. Okay, so I do get 140 for angle L. Any questions finding those base angles? Okay, then I'm going to look at the next section. So this section we're going to use that mid-segment formula, okay, that I wrote up at the top of your note sheet. So for trapezoid HJKL, M and N are midpoints of the legs. So since M and N are midpoints, that line that connects them is the mid-segment. Okay? Now number 5, I'm given that HJ is 32, LK is 60, and I want to find the length of MN. Well, since MN is that mid-segment, I'm going to use this formula I wrote down to find the mid-segment. Okay, so that's base of 1 plus base of 2 divided by 2. Okay, so my base of 1 is 32. My base of 2 is 60. Okay, so to find MN, we'll take 32 plus 60 and divide it by 2.
46.
And that'll be 46. Okay?
It's 6.
6 is a little bit different. Okay? In number 6, this time we're given that HJ is 18. So I'm just going to cross off this 32 and write 18. So HJ is now 18. This time I'm given that MN is 28. So your mid-segment this time is given to you. And you want to find this final base right here. And I'm going to label it X. Okay? So I'm still going to use that mid-segment formula. I'm just going to plug in different places. So this time, since I'm given the mid-segment, I'm going to plug in 28 where it says mid-segment because I already have that.
Oh, wow.
So I'll have 28 is equal to my first base, which I have is 18, plus my second base is x, and that's still divided by 2. So now I have to find x. So to do that, I'm going to multiply both sides by 2. I get 56 is equal to 18 plus x, since these 2's will cancel out. Then I just have to subtract 18. And that x value will be 38. Okay, so 2 different ways to find that mid-segment. Sometimes you'll be given the mid-segment. Sometimes you'll just be asked to find it. So make sure you are labeling your picture so you know which one you're looking for. Any questions on the mid-segments or the angles within your trapezoid? All right, then our next type of quadrilateral is a kite. Okay, so kite is still a quadrilateral, meaning it has 4 sides. Okay, it is a quadrilateral with exactly 2 pairs of consecutive sides congruent. Now before, when we were working with parallelograms, squares, rectangle, rhombuses, stuff like that, your opposite sides were congruent. In a kite, your consecutive sides are congruent. Okay, consecutive meaning next to. So your sides next to each other are going to be congruent. So if I look at my picture, my consecutive sides here are MN and NP. Okay, those 2 are next to each other, they're congruent. So our RM and RP next to each other and congruent. So it's not your opposite sides, it's your sides next to each other. And I already said this part. Unlike a parallelogram, the opposite sides of a kite are not congruent or parallel. Okay, so this is not a parallelogram. There are no sides parallel to each other. Okay, trapezoid had 1 pair of parallel sides. Kite does not have any parallel sides. Okay, the diagonals of your kite are perpendicular. Perpendicular meaning what? They intersect at what type of angle? 90 degrees. Okay? So those diagonals that you draw in make a 90-degree angle. Okay, just like your rhombus and your square, you are probably going to have to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for one of the sides. Okay, it creates a right triangle within your kite. Okay, there are 4 right triangles created there in your kite. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so if you have 2 of the sides, you can find the 3rd side by using that Pythagorean theorem. Okay, in a kite, exactly 1 pair of opposite angles are congruent. Okay, 1 pair of opposite angles. That pair is between your non-congruent sides. Okay, so my non-congruent sides are RM and MN. So that angle and the angle across from it are going to be congruent. Okay, not R and N. Okay, angle R is between 2 congruent sides. The angles between your non-congruent sides are the ones that are congruent in a kite. Okay, so for kite, R, M, N, P, angle R, M, N is congruent to angle R, P, N. Okay, so we want to use these properties to answer some practice problems here. Any questions on kites before I start the practice problems? Just get to it? Okay. All right, so number 1, we want to find the measure of angle JRK. Okay, so from J to R to K. That angle that I made up is this one right here. 90 degrees. And it is 90 degrees. Okay, it is 90 degrees because it's formed by those diagonals. And the diagonals of your kite are always perpendicular, creating that 90 degree angle. Number 2, if RJ, this one right here, is 3, and RK, this one right here, is 10, we want to find JK. How am I going to do that? I'm going to use the Pythagorean theorem. So a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Okay, I have this right triangle formed, JRK, and I want to find the hypotenuse of that right triangle. So that would be my c value. So I can plug in 3 for A, 10 for B, and I'm trying to find that c value there. So 3 squared is 9. 10 squared is 100. Okay, so I have 109 equals c squared. And I want to take the square root of both sides to get c by itself. Yep. So c will be about 10.4. Yes, you do get a decimal.
That's scary.
That's scary. Okay, so that side JK is about 10.4.
At least this makes sense because sometimes it's like 10 and then the next side's like 24. It's like,
Questions on the first two? Okay, then number 3, we're given the measure of angle GHJ is 90. Okay, so this whole angle here is 90. I know it's hard. Oh, sorry. That's 90. And the measure of angle GKJ is 110. Yes, I know it doesn't look like 110. It is 110. Okay. We want to find the measure of angle HGK. So we want to find this angle right here. Well, since I know these two angles aren't congruent, right? But I do need one pair of congruent angles within a kite, correct? So that means these two have to be congruent. So that means J would also be whatever I find X to be. Okay, so those two angles are congruent to each other. Well, this is a quadrilateral, so it has 4 sides. So what do all of the angles have to add up to be in a quadrilateral? 360. Okay, remember, if you don't know how to find the interior angle sum, you take your number of sides, which is 4, subtract 2, you get 2, and then multiply it by 180. 2 times 180 is 360. Okay, that's your interior angle sum that we went through in section 1 of this chapter. So 4-sided figure, all of your angles add to 360. So I'm going to add up all 4 of these and set it equal to 360. So we have 90 plus X plus 110 plus X. And that will equal 360. When you're doing this, you want to make sure you're adding 4 angles together. Okay, not 3, not 2, not 1. 4 angles have to add to 360. So I can combine my like terms here. So I have 200 plus 2x equals 360. So again, all I did was combine my like terms. Next, I'm going to subtract 200 from both sides to get 2x is equal to 160. Divide by 2
It's 80.
is 80. Okay, so the measure of angle HGK is 80 degrees. Okay, any questions on number 3? Okay, I want you guys to do the last 3 problems.
What?
Okay, 4, 5, and 6, the last 3 problems.
If I have this homework, I'm not gonna be able to do that. I have so much
I
stuff
have
to do.
this, and then I have some others here because I didn't add this.
Yeah, I know, but
I
I
didn't
don't
add
want to
this to
get
that,
that.
so then it was lower, and I got this, and then my answer's back. Now I'm confused. I don't have these two left.
Yeah, but there's like these ones. So what is it? It's 70.
Yeah, but then how would that make sense? Because if you subtract 30, if you still subtract 39, it's not even 12. Wait, actually, wait, hold on. Okay, so 1, 5,
39, 26.
yeah, but then, so.
Should I take the pass?
No, don't worry.
Is that the right answer though?
I want to start going through these so that I give you enough time to work on your assignment. If you understand how to do these 3 problems, you can start working on that assignment. Just make sure that you check your answer when I get there. Okay, so number 4, in my picture, HJ is 7, and we want to find HG. Well, your consecutive sides in your kite are congruent, meaning HG would also have to be 7. Okay? So here, HG would be 7. Okay? Number 5, you're given HG is 7, GR right here is 5, and you want to find HR. So again, this is a right triangle. So right triangle, and you're given 2 sides of that right triangle. So we can find that 3rd side, okay, by using the Pythagorean theorem. Now, when using the Pythagorean theorem, this is your hypotenuse, not one of your legs. So 7 is your C value. So I'm going to take 5 squared plus x squared is equal to 7 squared. Okay, so we have 25 plus x squared is equal to 49. So x squared is equal to 24. So I got x to be 4.9. Okay, so I got that HR is 4.9 if I take the square root of 24. Okay, make sure you're writing 7 squared as the hypotenuse, not one of the legs. Yeah. What was the question? You have a question? Oh, let me do this last one. All right, then number 6. Number 6 is just like number 3. So you're still finding HGK, and you're given GKJ and GHJ. Your numbers are just different. So I'm finding one of those congruent angles within my kite. So I'm going to add up all 4. So 52, 95, and my 2 x values because my 2 angles there are congruent. And that has to be equal to what? 360. Okay, all 4 of your angles in a kite have to add to be 360. Okay, so once I solve for x, that angle measure should be 106.5. Okay, so that angle is 106.5 degrees. Okay, questions on those 3 problems that I wanted you to work through?